Hi, this is Mr. Mullaney. This is a lesson recap of our lesson about rising national tensions and really starting to look at John Brown. This deck of slides was made by the Stanford History Education Group. If you want to access this deck of slides, I've put the link below in the description. Okay, so a little overview of what's going on in 1850s. Abolitionism. So it's spreading in the North. And why is it spreading? Well, it's spreading because of Uncle Tom's Cabin, which makes Northerners realize what slavery is really like. It's spreading because of the Fugitive Slave Act, which angers Northerners because it brings slavery to Northerners' front doors and makes all Northerners complicit with slavery by making them sheriffs of slavery. And then it also happens because of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854, which takes that Missouri Compromise line that had been basically the precedent for a good 34 years and says, no more, nope, now we can have slavery north of that line in the Louisiana Purchase. So if you're in the North, you're starting to become more anti-slave, and you're also thinking, wow, 1/3 of the population is wielding a lot of power over us. There really is a slave power that seems to be running the country. And you have three presidents in a row, Fillmore, followed by Pierce, and followed by Buchanan, who, even though they're Northerners, are acting on behalf of Southern interests. So you have Douglas, too, who's helping to spread abolitionism by speaking about it from a slave's perspective. And the fact that he was an educated slave was such a rarity. He could read and he could write. That was huge. William Lloyd Garrison, his newspaper, the Liberator, when you start off in 1831, wow, that guy's crazy. But then post-Fugitive Slave Act, Uncle Tom's Cabin in Kansas-Nebraska, Ed Garrison's making some points. And then you also have the Underground Railroad, slaves and abolitionists freeing slaves themselves. The total number is between 700 and about 100,000 that were freed in 30 years before the Civil War. Okay, you get that compromise of 1850, which I spoke about. And if this is a trade between North and South, California becoming a free state was a big get for the North. The South hated that. So they wanted something to make it a compromise. So, okay, Utah and New Mexico get popular sovereignty. They'll vote on slavery. Now, Utah and New Mexico do not have climates that lend themselves to plantations. So they weren't likely going to become slave states anyway. Now, if you're in the North, you're saying, hey, popular sovereignty in those two states. Great, South, you've been made whole. And if you're the South, you're saying, well, they're not going to be slave anyway. We need something else. And something else was the Fugitive Slave Law, which, as I said, brought slavery to the North's doorstep, outraged the North, but was what the South insisted upon to agree to make California a free state. And then you get Kansas-Nebraska Act, which upsets anti-slavery forces because it says that in territory north of the Missouri Compromise line in the Louisiana Purchase, there could be slavery if the settlers vote for it. And so you get what you get free soilers, people from northern states flocking to Kansas, but you also get Southerners flocking into Kansas as well. And what starts happening is a mini civil war, a prelude to what's coming, where the two sides fight against each other, and that's called Bleeding Kansas. From there, and by the way, this political cartoon illustrates this. Tom Ritchie has a great point about the victim in this political cartoon. It's not the slave that's about to get eaten, but it's the free soiler, the poor farmer who doesn't want to compete with slaves in Kansas or Nebraska and is having slavery forced down his throat. These four men are, Southern slave owners. Okay, John Brown. So he's an abolitionist. Okay, we have abolitionists. Involved in the Underground Railroad. So is Harriet Tubman. Okay. Moves to slavery to support the anti-slavery cause. He's a free soiler. Okay, nothing too special yet. And then he responds to violence by pro-slavery men by organizing murder of 5 pro-slavery settlers. So he takes abolition and backs it up with violence, with murder. All right, so later, 3 years later, so that's 1856. 3 years later, he's in Harper's Ferry, which is today it's West Virginia. Back then, West Virginia did not exist yet. So it's Virginia, slave state. The idea is he plans a raid on a federal arsenal to get their weapons, and then he wants to distribute weapons to slaves so that they can rise up. Well, it fails. There's a couple of his sons, and he had, I think, like 18. So a couple of his sons are killed, and Brown is ultimately hanged. So Lincoln called Brown a misguided fanatic. Now, the question that we will investigate in subsequent classes is, was Lincoln right about that? Was John Brown a misguided fanatic, or was he fighting for a good cause and the ends justify the means? That's something that we will investigate and to consider in class to come. So thank you, Stanford History Education Group, for that deck of slides, helping us learn about the strife before the Civil War.